This video is going to be a preview of the Ravens-Steelers rematch in the Wild Card weekend with a chance to go to Buffalo or perhaps Kansas City, depending on the other AFC games. I'm going to focus this preview on the Ravens defense matching up with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, an offense that they've been able to hold down generally through the course of 120 minutes of gameplay against each other, splitting the regular season games. I will have some film associated with this. Largely, this is going to be commentary, to be honest with you. Packaging together multiple plays for previews for Ravens game. Just the juice has not been worth the squeeze, to be honest with you, oftentimes. So this is generally going to be commentary. There's some generic points to make up front. Stop the run or slow it down. Defending the big pass up the sideline, I think, is going to be important, particularly when the ball is on the left hash. Brandon Stephens is a big part of that. He generally plays on the right-hand side for the Ravens, unless we're in our dime alignment, that is. And when the ball's on the hash, the X-receiver, in this case George Pickens for the Steelers, is going to be set into the boundary. The Ravens play so much man-to-man into the boundary, whether the ball's on the left hash or the right hash, that matchup, I would look for that if I were you as a fan trying to watch the game. You don't get a lot of information, but you can tell, at least on the Ravens field, where the hash is because there's no other teams that play in M&T Bank Stadium. When they played in Pittsburgh earlier in the year, you had those weird college hashes that were there from a college game being played the day before that made it really difficult to identify. I want to be real specific about two things that I've noticed with the Steelers film that are kind of like jabs, if you will. The Ravens have got to address. They've got to slow down. These are not personnel situations here. We're not talking about Stephens versus Pickens or Lamar versus Minkah Fitzpatrick. This is a particular situation, too, in fact, that I think the Steelers' offense tries to coordinate, tries to manipulate, and take advantage of. So here's the first one. When you see a tight end on the field, whether it's 12 personnel or 13 personnel or 11, like you've got here, this is 13, excuse me, look for run concepts to the weak side, away from the tight end side. Why? Well, first of all, the inside linebackers have got to make it turn into a 4-on-4. So what I mean is here, left tackle, left guard, center, running back. As the play develops, let's count those guys as their 4. This is post-snap with the gaps moving. You can see the 3 linemen and the running back. And then you as a defense have got to match with 4 players who are capable of getting to the point of attack. And if you don't match that, then you're not going to be able to defend that concept. So what the Steelers like to do is, from a formation standpoint, and they're not the only team that does it, but Arthur Smith specializes in it, run to the weak side. They like to create formational situations where they can pull or hold this defender such that it ends up becoming, imagine he's not here, and you'll see an example of this in a moment. You'll see a 4 for the offense, the Steelers, against only 3 for the defense. What you don't want is to rely on the boundary side safety to be making all of those plays. Essentially, for you as a fan, if you're trying to look for this, you're going to see the formation to the field, ball on the hash. In this case, it happens to be on the left hash. And this is a big setup, especially if you ask me when the ball's on the left hash. I think that's the most, you're going to laugh, or perhaps maybe you don't hear much analysis like this, and I typically don't focus on this as much as I am in this video. When the ball is on the left hash, I think that's a huge determining factor today. Not just because of the matchup of Pickens versus Brandon Stephens. I know this is film against the Chiefs, but also because they like to run the inside zone or outside zone weak to their left side. They must prefer that side of their offensive line. If you ask me, we'll get the end zone angle of this one and a couple of other plays too. Whether it's inside zone or outside zone, anything to the weak side, you got to be able to match numbers. So think of what I drew up a moment ago, the 3 offensive linemen and the running back post-snap. And Drew Tranquill goes on the underside here. The 4th defender ends up being your safety. That's not what you want. We don't want to have to allocate the 4th defender to the boundary to stop weak side run being the safety. Why? The ball's on the hash and George Pickens is over there. We would like to preserve the ability to hide to hide for Russell Wilson and not show him that we're rolling up the boundary side safety to stop those run concepts into the boundary because we've got Brandon Stephens over there. So it's all related, and hopefully I explain that in a way that tries to get across to you why I think that's one of the most important situations in the game from a Ravens defensive standpoint. Also, Russell Wilson is a right-handed quarterback, so it allows him to boot back out to his right, to his throwing side, and throw the ball more naturally. This is the boundary side safety that I'm talking about. It's post-snap movement, don't get me wrong, but my point still stands. We don't want to have to utilize that boundary side safety as the 4th defender. We want it to be the 2 inside linebackers trying to handle that, if you will. Take a look at how it works out if you don't have a fourth defender there. Really poor job from an alignment standpoint. And then post-snap reaction by the field side inside linebacker. Now, the ball's not exactly on the hash here. It's inside of the left hash, don't get me wrong. But here's your three primary defenders. There's your safety into the boundary, if you will. Again, the ball's between the hashes, so I'm getting away with one there by calling it a boundary side run. But look at the alignment of number 50. We're not going to be able to play that far away and expect to be able to stop these runs. They're going to be able to combo like they are here, and then they're combo in the front side D tackle. Whether it's 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, the Steelers want to run to the weak side. They want to force you as a defense to allocate either your field side inside linebacker to be able to get here or your boundary side safety. Again, when the ball is on the left hash, it's my opinion that's going to be a huge factor in this game. So we don't get a lot of information from broadcast groups. They don't give us personnel all the time. They certainly don't talk about formations, and perhaps I do too much, so my apologies for that. But you can see when the ball's on the hash, and that's one of the things I think you should look for in this game, especially when the ball's on the left side. All right, the second factor that I'd like to discuss is what I call wind back run concepts. I think Arthur Smith relies on these. And so when I say wind back, I'm going to use this play as an illustration. Wind back, cut back, whatever. The backside integrity has to be maintained at all times. They're a team that runs a lot of duos. So this is what I'm talking about, the backside integrity. They run a lot of duos, so they clearly execute a duo running back drill every day, which promotes great vision. It promotes the ability to cut back and or bounce it. Basically, read the D tackle or any combo blocks. Why am I calling this a wind back run? Because initially, off the snap, the running back is stepping to this side, and the toss is going to their right, to the defense's left. And then the intended point of attack, however, is to come back over here. 12 personnel is a huge indicator for this team. Look for that during the game as well. If they motion from 12 personnel to basically set the two tight ends on the same side from one another, that is a huge tell for the direction of the play. Just another way to accomplish the same task. 12 personnel, they set one of the tight ends in the backfield. And again, they toss it to one side. In this case, the bottom side of our screen. The defense is right. And then it's designed to come back to the top side. Now, it's a great fit. I think it's Ardarius Washington. Also, Tavius Robinson sprawling and then staying up. But it's conceptually, this is what I figured out. Whether the tight end is set in the backfield or whether one of the tight ends is here where Washington is and the other one is a slot tight end, essentially, these two tight ends mirroring each other, it really kind of doesn't matter. This is all just obfuscation, if you ask me. It's the same concept with these two tight ends. They want to get you moving to one side and then wind it back to the other side. I would offer to you that that's pretty much the same concept you saw on the previous play that I illustrated. I think their center is their best guy in terms of high-level combos. He's the guy, Zach Frazier, that I think gets the most out of their combo blocks and is able to not only get a block on the front side level, but also on the front level, but also be able to combo up and then read the defense. Let me give you one more example of this. I've actually shown you this from the All-22 already. Their run game is not as varied as the Ravens, right? We're shotgun, pistol, option stuff, counter option, zone, gap schemes. But at surface level, I say their run game is not as varied as us. But they do have, I would say, tight offensive run concepts that are designed to mitigate risk, to lower or minimize the risk of turnovers, shorten the game. At minimum, what they want is 2nd and 7 or maybe 2nd and 6 with the entire playbook still available to them on that down. So I've already shown you this one from the All-22, but I think it gives you a better idea of what I'm talking about. One tight end going from right to left motion, the toss going to their right, and then Jalen Warren winding it back. It's a great fit by Roquan Smith. I call this wind back because it's designed. Cut back, I would call things I would call a cutback, or at least I was taught to call a cutback, is something that's not designed. It's just a vision by the running back that he recognizes where the open space is and he can go on ahead and get there because of his vision and his explosiveness. One thing the Ravens have done a great job, if you ask me, against the Steelers is taking away the first read for Russell Wilson. I think this is a favorable matchup from that standpoint for the Ravens defense because we've been so QB focused. I've talked about it a lot on this channel from a coverage standpoint. I do think we've improved whereby instead of staring at the quarterback the whole time in zone, we're still able to read routes and then sometimes read the quarterback at the same time. I put that in quotes. It depends on the level of the player, whether it's a second-level player or third-level player. The more depth you have, the more I think you can be looking at the quarterback. We don't get beat by Russell Wilson's first read for whatever reason. Generally, he's not able to just get back there, first read, bang, 8, 10, 12, 14 yards. If he does complete something on a first read, it's typically a three-step short concept, number one, or it's something deep down the sidelines, a moon ball, if you will, that a lot of people call it. I think that the key for this team, they're going to play the same coverages. I think the Ravens are going to play the same coverages we've shown him in the 2 games in the regular season and force him to get to his second or third read. I just don't think that he responds well to those situations. A couple of examples of this here. This is against the Chiefs, and I'm just showing you film from later on. Does it mean that we should play a lot of zone? I think anything that changes, match, zone, sometimes some man-to-man, to me, he makes quicker throws when it's man. In some ways, he almost reminds me of a couple of quarterbacks that as soon as they see man free or as soon as they see cover 3, they immediately are going up the sideline, meaning from the bottom of the numbers to the sideline. I didn't know a whole lot about Russell Wilson, when he played with the Seahawks, to be honest with you. I understand what people have said about him, but watching the 2 game films of us against him, he certainly seems like a guy that if we give him different looks, I don't mean to say we can confuse him, but we can force him to kind of stutter in the pocket there by taking away the first read and maybe even the second one, putting him in a little bit of a staccato, or putting him in a little bit of a dangerous situation, precarious situation where he doesn't know exactly where to go with the football. Another element that I want to talk about, and this is just going to be commentary pretty much from here on out, is the difference between their offense under center and in the shotgun. The shotgun run game is virtually non-existent on film, and I think we have a huge edge when they're in the shotgun and it's not 3rd and 4. So 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, Russell Wilson could theoretically get out of there if we leave an escape route for him. If we rush 4 and we leave an escape lane, Russell Wilson can get out of there. Also 3rd and 4, he does a nice job of utilizing the running backs to just get conversions. Call them checkdowns, whatever you want. What I'm describing is 2nd and 8 and they're in the shotgun. 2nd and 7, they're in the shotgun. They do not have a run game out of the shotgun that really threatens us, in my opinion. I know that Russell Wilson he's athletic. He can move around in there. When they go when they go under center, let's do it this way. Yes, there is a tendency to be more run based, but they've got a myriad of concepts they can use. Regular run plays, some of which I've shown you. Jet sweep, which has been effective for them in small sample size. Running back screens, play action, where you then check it down to the running back. They kind of look planned at times. My point is, when they're under center, there's a differential timing on their play concepts. Shotgun is pretty direct or instant in terms of the timing. You saw a little bit of it when I showed you the one play against the Chiefs. Snap, get the ball, look, it's not there, second look, and now I don't exactly know what to do. I think when they're in the shotgun, we hold the advantage, and I think Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith kind of know that. Now, are they going to play Justin Fields and change that dynamic a little bit? From a Steelers perspective, I would recommend they do. I think they should get him in. Arthur Smith's a big sudden change guy, in my opinion. He was the offensive coordinator when they came to Baltimore and the Tennessee Titans pulled off the upset in 2019. Obviously, if you recall, touchdown pass to Khalif Raymond, I think on the first play of the second quarter. He's a sudden change guy. And so I would look for change of possession, a turnover, first play of the second quarter, something like that, Justin Fields to come in and they have some type of designed play to get him involved and maybe exploit us. I think Justin Fields is generally more effective in the shotgun than Russell Wilson is. One thing from a Ravens defensive perspective, the safeties are going to have to get involved in the run game. and the pass game. Kyle Hamilton, Darius Washington been playing really well. When Marlon Humphrey is the nickel DB, those guys are balanced in their reactions. They're very connected. I think the front six, front seven for the Ravens obviously has got to play very well. They have a tall task in that the Steelers are committed to their style of play. But look at what we've done in 2 games against them. Held the Steelers to, I think, 305 yards in Pittsburgh, and then 315 yards of offense in the win in Baltimore. In both of those games, limited Russell Wilson to less than 200 passing yards. Now, you may say, well, Coach, I don't think total yards is an indicator for a win or a loss because of their ability to generate turnovers, and that is true. They've generated 33 turnovers on their defense, which is tied for first in the league. But I think total yards is important for Pittsburgh in this manner. Time of possession. They would like to shorten the game, keep the score low. There's a little bit of a paradoxical nature there with this matchup between the Ravens and the Steelers. And it's one that I think kind of makes this game so interesting. This particular matchup, so interesting because our offense is so explosive with Lamar, Derrick Henry, Andrews, Flowers, who I know won't play, Bateman, Justice Hill. You would think we would want to make the game longer, extend the game out. Here's a look at the last 4 games between these two teams and the number of possessions. Week 16, 11 possessions for the Ravens, 10 for the Steelers. Week 11, 13 for each team. Dating back to last year, 2023, 12 possessions for each team in both games. So you're talking about greater than 10 possessions in each game. I think that favors the Ravens. If the Steelers were able to keep this game down to maybe 9, which is somewhat unusual, or 10 possessions for each team, that's in their favor, if you ask me. The longer this game, now the other side of that coin is that they're so great at forcing turnovers. That opens us up to more plays, more opportunities for them to force turnovers. And check this out. The Steelers have forced 2 turnovers in 12 at least 2 turnovers, in 12 games this season. That's remarkable. They are second in the NFL in turnover margin. But the interesting thing is about them being second they're plus 16 at turnover margin. I think the Bills are first. Pittsburgh has actually turned the football over far more than the Ravens have. We have 11 turnovers this year, only 4 of which are interceptions. The Steelers' offense has committed 17. Their 33 turnovers forced, like I said, is tops in the league, and that's an incredible look. In 7 different times, they've forced 3 turnovers. So if you only took those 7 games and only counted those, they would have 21 turnovers, obviously 7 times 3. That would still be good enough for 13th in the league in turnovers forced overall in 2024. The problem for them is, and maybe the interesting part of the discussion, in our second year under Todd Monken, Lamar's second year in this system, we've only committed 11 turnovers. Now, 3 of those did come in the Week 11 loss in Pittsburgh. You had the ridiculous, filthy interception by Peyton Wilson. It's a wheel route to Justice Hill. Maybe it's a foot underthrown by Lamar. And still, no matter where it's thrown, no matter how you evaluate the throw, in 100 instances of that throw in the same location, it probably still only gets picked like once or twice. Then you have the strip of Isaiah Likely by Patrick Queen into the boundary, I think late in the second quarter. Henry's fumble to open the game. I would say that all 3 of those are anomalous. Nonetheless, they did occur. I do think there is a part of my brain, I should say, that thinks if the Steelers don't force 2 turnovers in this one, that it's going to be tough for them to get out of Baltimore. If we play the quality of defense that we put on film in the last 7 weeks, which is it's more than a stingy defense. It's downright one of the top 5 or 7 defenses in the league. I'm sure that you're aware because there's been so many previews of this game, and mine certainly pretty late. But since we lost to the Steelers 18-16 in Pittsburgh in Week 11, the Ravens have allowed an average of 261 yards of offense per game. Now, I also know that within that data, we've played the Texans the week after they lost Tank Dell. And we've also played the Browns. But within that stretch, we've played the Eagles, the Chargers, and the Steelers twice, who won double-digit football games this year. I think the data for the Ravens defense is real data, meaning it lines up with the talent we have on this defense. In my opinion, it's what we can do, and that's what made it so disappointing earlier in the year when we were playing incredibly poorly on defense. Now, in saying that, I still think it's extremely important to hold this Steelers team. If we hold them to 95 yards rushing or less, we win the football game. Anything between 105 and 125, 130 is probably going to be a really close game, just like the first game was and the second game was before Marlon Humphrey's interception. If they were to get above 135 rushing, if they were to get above 330 overall yards, we're going to have issues because that means we're not getting off the field. Clearly, they do have a matchup they can exploit. I've mentioned it a whole lot early in the preview here. The left hash, Pickens into the boundary, that's a swing factor. They do have the ability to change the dynamic of the game with one moonball, as it's called, to Pickens versus Stevens, or back shoulder throw. Both of those are relatively safe throws from a Steelers perspective because it's either a completion, Pickens goes up and gets it, or it's an incompleted pass, or maybe there's potential for a defensive pass interference as well. I do think that it's a good thing we've defended them so well twice, and Arthur Smith's propensity to be somewhat conservative but be aggressive when he wants to is an interesting dynamic because, as I said, I think he's a sudden change guy. How many times on 1st and 10 is he going to throw a moon ball to George Pickens? Well, maybe they do make a catch. Maybe they get a pass interference. Maybe it's incomplete. And if it's incomplete, now they're in 2nd and 10. And guess what? They're in the shotgun, 11 personnel or 12 personnel, and I think we hold the advantage there. So there is a risk-reward element, if you ask me, for Arthur Smith. He's got to create some advantageous situations for Russell Wilson. He's going to rely on the run game. We know that. Use it as a platform to open up other things. I would like to see us defend split zone well and get that off the board early, meaning the first 2 or 3 times they run split zone, let's shut it down. It's essentially a designed wind back concept, but you can hit it front side. Derrick Henry has multiple times this year. Eliminate it from their playbook. Take it from their playbook. Take it away from Arthur Smith's mind. To revisit something from earlier in the preview about turnovers. For the Steelers defense, there's a downward trend. And I'm not saying that I think this means we're going to win the game, that we're going to win the game by 10, 12 points. But if you look at their defensive stats in the last 7 weeks, it just hasn't been the same quality of defense they played in their 8-2 start. They've allowed 26 points per game since Week 11. And that also includes 2 games against the Browns. 3 of those games against the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs, however. It is my opinion that they need to force turnovers tonight, or at minimum, significantly stop or slow down our run game in order to create a situation where their formula stands up. Run the ball, limit turnovers, limit risk. Don't let Russell Wilson make mistakes, the type of mistakes that he's made in some situations this year, and put your defense in a bad spot. TJ Watt, his health, huge factor. I'm not really talking about our offense versus their defense. I'm sure that's been covered by a lot of people, especially with how well Lamar Jackson's played this year, being named first-team All-Pro on Friday, probably going to get his 3rd MVP award. I think it relates to the other side of the ball. I think their defense forcing turnovers puts us in a situation where we're trying to create negative yardage plays. Their offensive line also, I think, is the type that needs to chew us up with 3 and 4 and 5 yard gains. They don't seem to be a big play offense, in my opinion. I think if we can get them into 3rd and 5s, it's 2nd and 8, 3rd and 5, and we know that it's a pass play. Of course, the threat of the running back screen is always going to be present because they did hit us with it twice in that game in Pittsburgh. I really don't do predictions, first of all, because I'm not very good at it. Second of all, I think the weather's going to play a role. It's been really frigid lately in this area. For like 3 or 4 days in a row, we had days where it was listed at 18, 20 degrees, but the real feel or whatever was actually like 9 or 10 degrees. It wasn't as cold Friday into this morning, Saturday. I think they're talking about 28, 30 degrees at kickoff with a 10 to 12 mile an hour wind. Probably going to feel closer to 12, 14. It's going to be really cold. Really cold. It's going to be playoff football with an emphasis on the run game and protecting the ball. The Steelers do that well. We do have one of the best run defenses and one of the best run games in the NFL, though. Lamar and Derrick Henry on the other side. I know Saquon Barkley got the nod at first-team All-Pro. Derrick Henry's, on that level. In the end, I think some tendency has to break. Once again, we've only committed 11 turnovers this year. However, 4 of them happened in the 2 games against the Steelers. If you separate us into 2 seasons, 2 games against the Steelers, and the other 15 games against the NFL, we have 7 turnovers against the rest of the NFL. In fact, The Ravens have only committed 5 turnovers in their last 10 games, and 4 of those are against the Steelers. Meanwhile, they, on their side, they've also given up a whole lot more points as the seasons progress, meaning points per game. If we don't turn the football over, it's obvious that's a huge swing factor, and one that I think lets every other chess piece kind of fall in our hands. We've got a defense playing extremely well, limiting big plays, stopping the run. The only team that's given us trouble running the ball lately, well, the Steelers did get, I think, 117 and 122. The Eagles got 140 on a lot of option and RPO concepts. Otherwise, we've been really good against stopping the run. I think we've got a better quarterback by a factor of 4 or 5. We're more versatile with our offensive schemes, higher level of execution on offense. Really no comparison there from a quarterback standpoint. We got a Hall of Fame running back. He's going to get a lot of attention from the Steelers defense. No matter how we play, no matter how they play the option, we've got, quote, options to mitigate it and put their defense on the heels, on their heels. I think our secondary is playing really well together and can present Russell Wilson multiple looks. They've been doing that a lot lately. This is going to be a tough physical AFC North game. The Steelers think they're the better team. Obviously, I think, you think, the Ravens think that they're the better team. For me, turnovers and avoiding turnovers might be the biggest factor, even though we believe we have a talent advantage, because those turnovers creates a different dynamic. Who adjusts to the cold weather factor better? That's probably going to be the biggest, I think, determining issue for who gets to move on and go on the road next week. I would look for something in the Ravens' favor in a 24-16 or 27-20, or maybe some kind of crazy number where the Steelers end up having to settle for like 4 field goals and 1 touchdown, 27-19. For some reason, an 8-point differential is sticking out in my brain within an organic game, meaning no turnovers. Anything that's +1 or +2 for the Ravens opens up a wider range of possibilities, in my opinion. Am I saying the Ravens are going to absolutely win? No, but that's just what my instinct from watching the film, especially focusing on the Chiefs and Bengals defense against the Steelers the last 2 weeks of the regular season. I appreciate you guys' time. Forgive me for not including nearly as much film. These previews have become, A, increasingly more difficult to produce, and B, decreased return on the amount of time spent on them. So this one ended up being a lot more commentary later on a Saturday morning than I intended. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this preview with a little bit of film study flavor of the Ravens-Steelers rematch in the wildcard round, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.